When we think of magic, most of us think of movies, video games, books, and fairy tales. At best, we use the word figuratively. We speak of the magic of love, and we say Eric Clapton does magic with the guitar. When no other word can describe a deeply mysterious and moving experience, we say magic. Yet our modern notions of magic are distant echoes of what has been a profound dimension of human life for millennia of forgotten history. How did our ancestors understand magic? And how does this reflect their life wisdom? And is there something we have yet to learn, or rather relearn, by studying ancient occult beliefs? This is what we're going to explore in this video. In The Golden Bough, Sir James Frazer points out two basic principles of magic. First, that like produces like, or that an effect resembles its cause. And second, that things which have once been in contact with each other continue to act on each other at a distance. The former principle is the law of similarity, the latter, the law of contact. Let's begin with a popular example of the law of similarity: voodoo magic. The North American Indians believed that by drawing the figure of a person in sand, ashes, or clay, or by considering any object as his body, and then pricking it with a sharp stick, or doing it any other injury, they inflict the corresponding injury on the person represented. For example, when an Ojibwe Indian desires to work evil on anyone, he makes a little wooden image of his enemy, and runs a needle into its head or heart, or he shoots an arrow into it, believing that wherever the needle pierces or the arrow strikes the image, his foe will the same instant be seized with a sharp pain in the corresponding part of his body. But if he intends to kill the person outright, he burns or buries the puppet, uttering certain magic words as he does so. You see, magical thinking sees a hidden dimension of reality, where all objects, people, times, and places touch one another. What we perceive as separate entities in the world are actually all connected through invisible threads in the magic ether. Magic also sees the boundary separating the human mind from the natural world as porous and ultimately illusory. So, if a magician subjectively perceives a relationship between any two objects, this relationship automatically becomes real in the objective world. The world within and without naturally flow into one another and form a homogeneous, interconnected whole. This dimension where time and space and mind and world melt together is what today we call poetry. But for a magician, poetry is not confined to the human imagination. It imbues nature. What today we see as impersonal elements and forces, he sees as conscious agents that are in contact with our thoughts and feelings. In fact, magic is more closely related to science than we give it credit for. Like scientists, spellcasters see the world as an integrated whole. Nature for them obeys concrete laws that can be understood and exploited to one's benefit. To perform a spell is not a matter of faith, but comes down to possessing the right knowledge and performing the right actions. Yes, gods, ghosts, occult powers, and other phenomena we would call supernatural today do exist in the magical scheme of things. But they exist as part of that scheme. A ghost is no more supernatural than a rabbit. Both have mysterious origins and motivations, though the former does not make for such good stew. A magician does make a difference between various types of beings and phenomena, and she adjusts her methods accordingly. But she knows that all worlds and creatures, no matter how familiar or bizarre, belong to the same wholeness of life. In her understanding of that wholeness lies her power. Still, magic is also very much unlike science. Where a scientist uses reason to understand the world, a magician uses intuition. One works with the mind, the other with the heart. Magical thinking is by nature poetic. It takes the mind beyond the confines of the empirical and reveals hidden rhymes in the world. These rhymes make up a language, the language of nature, and to learn them is to begin to converse with the world. Here are two more ethnographic examples. The Baganda of Central Africa believe so strongly in the intimate relation between human sex and the fertility of the ground that among them a barren wife is generally sent away because she is supposed to prevent her husband's garden from bearing fruit. In Ukraine, on St. George's Day, the young married people lie down in couples on the sown fields and roll several times over on them, in the belief that this will promote the growth of the crops. Such beliefs and practices show how, in the paradigm of magic, two separate but similar phenomena unite through the alchemy of the poetic imagination. But this is more than mere poetry or mere imagination. It is a deeper way of seeing, which goes beyond the surface particularities of phenomena, right to their archetypal essence. The challenge of fertility, of continuing the vital cycle, of passing life on, is a challenge for the entire universe. Whether it is your garden or your wife, your nation or your creative output, it is always the same struggle, the same rage against the dying of the light. Where science divides, magic unites. Where science treats the symptom, magic seeks the root cause. Here you may ask, but am I really to believe that a bunch of men and women rolling over a field is more effective for agriculture than our best modern fertilizers? But to ask this question is to miss the point. It is like taking a fish out of the ocean to see if it can run as fast as a rabbit. Magic never tries to be science. It never works on the part, but always on the whole. The effects of magic cannot be measured as they do not belong to the language of measurement. Where science sees quantities, magic sees qualities. Magic can only be experienced through the heart, and when it is, there can be no doubt as to its effectiveness. And yet magic is not simply an alternative to science. It is also its ancestor. In the intuitive leaps of ancient magic, we find man's first calls out into the dark mystery of nature. Calls that still reverberate in the cold, pristine monument of modern science. Yes, science speaks in numbers and magic in rhymes. But what is important is the act of speaking itself. It is by no means obvious that nature has a nature. We should not underestimate the genius of our ancestors simply because we are standing on their shoulders. And we shouldn't assume all too quickly that in fact we are standing on their shoulders. The crazy idea that the world is moved by hidden laws which form a language and that man can learn this language is more revolutionary than any innovation in recorded history. And we owe this idea to great magicians whose names have disappeared in the mist of time. In the final analysis, magic is no more opposed to science than the view from my left eye is opposed to the view from my right eye. It is simply a different place from which to perceive the mystery of the universe. Fraser calls magic the bastard sister of science, but in this he is blinded by the prejudices of his age. I believe our culture is slowly maturing into the idea of letting go of our cyclopean, monochrome picture of the world. The picture of a world that should and could be understood only through reason, only through measurement. Think of the ever-increasing research into parapsychology, psychedelics, and the worldwide flourishing of psychotherapy. Think of the modern renaissance in mythology studies. The obsession of the Age of Enlightenment is slowly losing its grasp on modern man, and we're beginning to reclaim the exiled parts of our spirit. I believe it is worth it to take the risk and open our long-forgotten eye for the poetics of life, our eye for the magic of nature and the nebulous forces at work within us. Like the sense of depth we gain from having two eyes, an additional dimension of reality reveals itself once we begin to experience the world through both our mind and our heart. If this is all our age has to learn from magic, so be it. The deeper mysteries of our ancestors remain waiting for us to be ready to know them again. Thank you for watching. This video is an abridged version of the new article on the Seeker to Seeker website. If you'd like a deeper dive into the mysteries of magic, make sure to visit seekertoseeker.com. If you enjoy this kind of content, send some love by also liking and subscribing to the Seeker to Seeker channel. And remember Rumi's words, what you seek is seeking you. See you next time.